Boker Tov. Today's daf yomi is Nedarim daf lamed Nedarim. Why did I say Nedarim daf lamed? Today's daf yomi is Nedarim daf chaf. Nedarim 21. Nedarim daf chaf off. So the third time we get it right. I don't know. So we start with the Mishnah on the bottom of daf chaf Amud Beis. The Mishnah is called Arba Nedarim. The parak is called Arba Nedarim. The third chapter of Maseches Nedarim, and the Mishnah starts as follows: Arba Nedarim hitiru chachamim. The sages allowed 4 vows, and presumably, as our Gemara is going to discuss, that they are mutarin me'alein, as the Ran tells us, that they're permitted on their own below heter chacham. You don't even need to go to a chacham. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're allowed to say the vows in the first place. That's a machokas rishonim, whether or not you're allowed to say. When it says that 4 vows are permitted, it means that you can do the thing that you take a vow against yourself without going to a chacham. It doesn't mean you're allowed to make this vow in the first place. So Arba Nedarim B'Tira Chachamim, Nidre Ziruzin, Nidre Havai, Nidre Shkagos, Nidre Onsin. So what are these 4 types of vows? Nidre Ziruzin, these are vows of encouragement. The Mishnah is going to tell us what that means. Nidre Havai, these are nonsensical vows, like exaggeration vows. We'll see what that means. Where, for example, you say, this is a vow unless I saw like the number of people went out of Egypt, and clearly you didn't see that in number of people. So it's clearly an exaggeration. Nidre Shkagos, you made a vow and you accidentally made a mistake. You said in the vow that I never ate today, but you forgot that you ate. Or Nidre Onsin, this is a vow that you were expecting something to happen, but then circumstances beyond your control prevented that thing from happening. So all those vows, they're annulled on their own. You don't even need to go to a chacham. Gemara says, Nidre Zeruzin, Kate said, what's a vow of encouragement? The following. Ayemocher chafetz. If a person was selling an object, and while he's selling this object, he says, Konem she'eni pochet l'cha min hasela. He takes a vow. We're not sure the different explanations. How either he says, if I'm wrong, then I vow, by this loaf of bread that I won't eat. Or maybe he says, I won't buy this object if it goes less than a seller. Seller is 4 dinarim. So that's what the seller says. I'm not going to sell for a penny less than 4. V'hala omer konim sheni mosif chala shekel. The other one says, I vow I'm not adding on to the shekel, which is 2 dinarim. So they basically took these opposite vows. One vowed I'm not going less than 4. The other one vowed I'm not going more than 2. So on the top of Chaf Aleph from an Aleph on our daf, Shnei and Rotzin Pishlosh Dinarim. Really, they were both intending to do the value of 3 dinarim. So the vow is going to be valid because they're both intending to really sell it for 3. They were just saying the vow to try to encourage this person. The one who was selling was trying to encourage the other guy to go higher. And the one who was buying was trying to encourage the other guy to go lower. So now we come to the Mishnah, then we come to the Gemara. The Gemara says, Arba Nedarim. That what our Mishnah say that there's these 4 types of vows that the sage is allowed. So Amarle, Rabbi Abba Bar Memo, Rabbi Ami. So Rabbi Abba Bar Memo says Rabbi Ami Amar so Mishnah the Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah Mantana Arba Nedarim. Who's the author of this Mishnah? Who says that there are 4 types of vows? Who's the author of this Mishnah? So he says the author is Rabbi Yehuda He the Amar Mishim Rabbi Tarfon. So the author of this Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda in that which he said in the name of Rabbi Tarfon, who said, Nazir. So this is the position of Rabbi Tarfon, who says actually none of these vows, if they had made these vows about becoming a Nazirite, none of them would be Nazirites. And the same thing is by a Neder, because Nazirus and also presumably vows are only valid if it's lahafla, only if it's a clear statement, not if it's a conditional statement. And that's the case. There's really nothing special about these 4 specific types of vows, because that's what our Mishnah says, Arba Nedarim Mitarim. But it's really any vow which is conditional, we're going to say is not going to be valid because it Shalom Nitna Naziris El Afla. But that problem with that approach is that there's nothing special about the vows of our Mishnah, because there's something, but there's nothing unique to these four cases. It's really any conditional vow. So therefore, Rabbah has to tell us that if you take a Rabbanon, even if you want to say this is like the Rabbanon who argue with Rabbi Tarfon, and they say, yeah, there can be a conditional vow to Nazirus. So if that's the case, who is our Mishnah like? Even like the Rabbanon. But the Rabbanon say that there can be a conditional vow. So why is this considered a valid? Why is this considered not a valid vow? So the Rava explains. Rava Amar Filter Rabbanan Mikatani Shneim Ratzu Shneim Rotsikatani. Did it say both of them wanted? It said both of them want. What does that mean? So let's look at the Ron's explanation. We can look at the Mefarish. Rava says, he says that the Mishnah of Nidrei Zeruzin, the reason why we're going to say it doesn't need an annulment is not because Afahi. It's not because we require the vows to be clean and direct without conditional. But rather because the rabbis calculated this person wasn't really intending to make a vow, he just wanted to encourage. The Mikotanu Ratzu, because did it say that they wanted, which means did it say that they wanted that would be the end result? No. Shem wrote Sinkatani. The Mashra Mitchil Sof, that they wanted really from the beginning, it was really his intent that it would be 3. So that's what the other Ran explains it. Ratzu means that they wanted this from the beginning to be 2 and to be 2 in the end. No, they didn't really want that. They wanted it to be 3, and that's and their vow wasn't real from the beginning. That's what the Mefarish says. The Mashal Mikara, you wrote some Gimel Dinarid. So they from the beginning it was really their intent for it to be 3. Amalei Ravino, back to the Gemara. Amalei Ravino, Ravashi, Amarlo. So Ravina says, Ravashi, Amarlo, Tfei Misela. So let's say the guy who's selling it says actually more than a seller. He says 4 dinar. The Hala Omar, Batzer Mishakel, and the other one says, no, I need less than a shekel, meaning to say the person who's buying it says, I'll buy it for less than a shekel. Nidrei Have Oziruzin Have. Is that going to be considered a neder, or is it going to be considered a zeruzin? So what's the question? We'll look again at the Ran. Is it a neder in that case where the guy says, I'm not going to sell it to you for anything less than something greater than a sell, meaning let's say 4 dinar and a little bit more, or the other one saying I'm not going to purchase it and the price he gives is even less than a shekel. So the Ran explains the equal member, because we can say the kivan, the nachos kulihai with the yuka, the dafka nadru v'lozaris. So maybe because they were so exact, they gave a really precise amount, and it wasn't just this general amount of a selah or a shekel. That maybe they're being exact and they weren't just trying to encourage. Or alternatively, he says, I'm not going to give you anything less than 5 dinarim. And the other one says, I won't give you anything more than a dinar. So do we say, says the Ran, do we say that since they're farther apart, and maybe they were really being specific, and it would be a vow, it's not just a vow of encouragement. The Gemara says, how do we answer this question? Amarei Tanina, we learned this. This is going to be something that we learned in the Mishnah and Daf Samach Gemara base. Hay misarev bechavero sheyochel etzo. One guy is trying to get his friend to eat with him, and the other guy is saying, "No, I don't want to eat with you. I'm going to eat with you." He says, "V'amaro konen beischa shani nechnas tipas tzonin," and the guy says, "Konen beischa shani nechnas tipas tzonin shani tohim." So basically, he says, he takes an oath, I'm not even going to enter into your house. I'm not even going to have a drop of cold water. Basically, goes such an extreme, I'm not even going to have a drop of cold water. The Mishnah says, under those circumstances, the person who took the oath is actually really going to be permitted to enter into his house and really to drink the cold water. Because really, when he takes that oath, he didn't intend to really not enter into the house or not to have a drink of water. But really, really, all his whole intent was he didn't want to eat or drink. So as the Gemara, but why? What tipas tzonon kamar? But he said specifically a tipas tzon. He said specifically a drop of drink. Now mishtai inishachri. That's the way people speak. So we see this is the way people speak. So the vow should not be binding, even if he does more than a seller or less than a dinar. Look at the Rashi. Look at the Ran. The Ran says, even though he was being so specific, and he's very distant from what his friend said. His friend was trying to get him to eat. He said, I'm not even going to have a drink. That he prohibited upon himself. He said, I'm not even going to walk in. I'm not even going to drink. Nevertheless, we say the Rav v'dafka. We say it wasn't a real vow. So too in this case, Alpha Gav, in our case, explains Iran, even though he says Chad Fei, he says one more than a Selah, or one less than a shekel, Ziruzin Ave. It's a Ziruzin. It's just a vow of encouragement, it's not a specific vow. Gemara says, not necessarily, Gemara says, on our way that Ravina responds to Rav Ashi, it's not a good proof. We're on top of Chafaf from the base. He says, Midame, the two cases are not the same. Gavet Sonain, when it comes to the cold water, he says, I'm not even going to have a drink. Doesn't mean that he's just speaking, words of encouragement, because we have a principle. Tzadikim Omer Ma'at Osin Harbe. There, maybe he's being specific because he knows there's a concept. We actually have it in our parsha, the opposite. The concept is the righteous say a little and do a lot. The wicked say a lot and do a little. That's from our parsha. And Ephron said a lot and did a little. In the end, he took the whole 400 shekel of Vera Sofer from Avram with the Chayisar, with the Maris and Machpelah. With the tzaddikim like Avram in last week's parsha, they say a little, do a lot. So he knows that if he even gives in a little, if the guy says, I'm even going to have a drink, he knows his friend's going to give him a whole meal. So he was being specific. So there, maybe in that case, we're going to say, as the Ran explains, and therefore he's afraid if he's going to even let him give him a drink of milk, water, one little drink, he's afraid that he's going to give him a lot of food. And that's why he says tzipas tzonin. But that's really just a vow of encouragement, not dafka. In that case, we could say he's so worried that he's going to give him food, so he says, I'm not even having a drink of water, because he knows once you give him an inch, he's going to take everything. But in our case here, Delma dafka kamala, maybe he was being specific about that amount, which was a greater amount. It was a very specific amount. And it wasn't just a vow of encouragement. And so maybe our question is not resolved. Maybe we should be strict and say it's a valid vow. And that's what the Gemara says. Maybe he was really saying just less than a selah or more than a shekel. Maybe meaning to say maybe he wasn't being specific. Maybe it's just a vow of Ziruzin. Or maybe no, it's specific and it really was a vow. Gemara says, Tibai, we're going to leave this question unresolved. Tibai, and we've said several times, the Mesachas Nedarim is Lashon Meshuneh. It's an unusual language, so this is really the Mesachas way of saying Teku. Saying, leave the question unresolved. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav Asi, Arba Nedarim Halalu, Tzrichan She'il Chacham. He says these four types of vows, four types of vows, even though when we explained it in our Mishnah, we said that these four vows are permitted, which means you don't even need to ask a question of a Chacham. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Asi, these 4 types of vows require she'el chacham, meaning to say you need to get them annulled by the sage. And Kiyamisa Kamei de Shmuel, and when I said this in front of Shmuel, Amar Tani Arba Nedarim, Itiru Chachamim, Va'at Amar Strichon she'el chacham. So Shmuel said, the Tana said these 4 vows are permitted, and you want to require a she'ela to a chacham. So Shmuel said, no, the vows are permitted on their own. You don't even need to ask a chacham for that. Rav Yosef Masning Lo Hashmaita B'Halishna. Rav Yosef recorded this discussion in the following, using the following language. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Asi Ein Chacham Rishai Lahatir Ela Ke'in Arba Nedarim Halalu. He says, no, when a chacham wants to annul a vow, he can only do it like these 4 types of vows. You can only annul it like these 4 types of vows. What does that mean? So we'll look at what the Mefarish said. We'll just read the next one, then we'll look at what the Ran says in the Mefarish. So, Kasavar, he's in the position in potchem becharata. He's in the position that you cannot make as an initial vow regret, just regret. There's 2 types of ways of basically we'll remind ourselves of the background. Then we'll read the Mefarish and the Ran. Very important point. There's 2 types of ways of annulling a vow. You can do a petach or you can do a charata. Charata is regret, but every vow is regret. That's why you're trying to annul it. No, but it means that the regret was that you said the vow in anger, that you regret your actions at that moment, that you were saying the vow in a moment of anger, and anger led to your vow. And the other type of way of annulling a vow is that the circumstances changed, and that if you had known this information, would you have made this vow in the first place? So what Rabbi Yehuda is saying in the name of Rav Asi is saying, Ein Chacham Rishai Lahatir Ela Ke'in Arba Nedarim Halalu, that you need to have some sort of new circumstances. Regret is not sufficient. Kasavar Ein Potchem Becharata, that you can't just annul a vow with just simply regret. We'll look at the Mefarish and then we'll read the Ran. Ela Ke'in Dal Nedarim Halalu. Hani Hu Deshar. These types of vows are permitted. Shem Deleis Bo Mamish. Because there's leis bo mamish, there's nothing to them. But the other types of vow of shar nedarim, but real vows, ein adam rishai lahatir ad she'yischar hamnodar me'atzmo. You're not allowed to annul them unless there's charata, unless there's regret because of he was upset at the moment when he made the vow. So the next Mefarish says, "Kasavar ein pochim b'charata, ein chacham rishai leftoach." So the Mefarish says that this means that the Chacham is not allowed to start the conversation and say, did you make this vow with this intent? So the Mefarish says it means that the one who makes the vow needs to express the regret first. He says, and the one who makes the vow needs to start the conversation and say that I didn't intend to make it like this. So he starts the regret. But look at what the Ran says. The Ran explains as follows. What does it mean? So the Ran is saying that you're not allowed to annul the vows in general with charata, these 4 types of vows. It's not a charata, it's not regret for your anger, but it's what's called a petach. Nadar kashu niter b'petach, because a vow, when it is allowed with a petach, when you annul with a petach, mochiach mitocho shum neder tos. You prove that it was a mistaken vow. And then it's like these 4 vows. But with regret, you don't prove that the vow was a problem. What's the reason why a Pesach is better than a Charata? Hanelder Omer, because anytime you annul a vow with a Pesach, the one who makes the vow is saying, Shafilu b'tchil k'shenadar, and even when he made the vow to begin with, if he had known these circumstances, he wouldn't have made the vow. And we see it was a mistaken vow. But if he makes, he wants to know through regret, you can't find any circumstances. If he had known these circumstances, he would have made the vow. But what's he saying now? He's saying from the anger of Nemehirus, or because I was just speaking too quickly, Nadarti. Now I regret that I made this vow to begin with. So that's the difference between a Pesach and a Neder. Pesach, according to the Ran, is new circumstances, and a Neder is regret, and a Charata is the regret that you said the vow in anger. So Rav Asi says that you need to do a Pesach and not Charata. That just having regret because you said in anger is not sufficient. But we'll see that this is a dispute amongst the Amoraim, because Ahuda also kamed Rav Huna. There's once a person who came in front of Rav Huna. He wanted him to annul his vow. He said to him, are you consistent with what you were state of mind when you made the vow? Meaning to say, do you agree with it? He said, no. Visharia. So this seems to be like you know the vow just on the basis of regret. So not like Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav Asi. So too, I would also comment to Rav Barafuna. A person came from Rav Barafuna. He said, if there were 10 people who were with you then, and the commentaries say 10 because when 10 is there, there's Hashem there, and you wouldn't have been angry. So if there had been 10 who would have appeased you, would you have made the vow? Meaning, say you only made the vow in anger. No, I wouldn't have made the vow vitiro. Again, it seems to be annulling it just on the basis of regret. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, you say to a person, Adam, was this really your intent from the beginning? Meaning to say, did you just say it in regret? Amar Lav, if he says, no, I just said it in anger, matirinu. So we're going to annul it. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosir, Omer Mishal Aviv, Omer Mlo Adam, Ilu Ayasar B'nei Adam Shefaisu Chabos Hashem Min Adarta, Im Lav, Im Amar Lav Matirna. So he says, listen, if there were 10 people that come me down that would never have said it, we would know it. It's the same idea that it's sufficient to have regret. So meaning to say, you have to have regret that the regret is that when you said it, you said it in anger, and that's enough to annul the vow. So the Gemara is going to give some incidents about this. So the person came to Rav Asi to annul his vow, and he says, "Kado tiyes," meaning to say, as the Ran explains, are you regretting that which you said from the beginning? Meaning from an expression of Toa al Rishonus. Are you in astonishment? Are you regretting that which you did? Amar Lei. So he said to him, when he said, are you regretting it? He said, Lo. So he says, no. But the Ran explains, it's bitmiya. It's with astonishment. Of course I'm regretting. Why do you think I'm here in the first place? This Sharia. So we know the vow. Udasa coming to Rebbe Lazar. He came in front of Rebbe Lazar. Amalei Bais Nador. He said, did you want to make the vow, or were you just saying it in anger? Amalei He said, if these people hadn't got me upset, then I wouldn't need anything from you, but they got me upset. So obviously, meaning to say, I only made the vow in anger. And so therefore, I'm regretting now that which I made the vow in the beginning. I did it out of anger. So then he responds, he says to him, Taha Kabayas. He said the vow will be permitted just like you wanted, meaning to say he was of the position that you're pulled from the charata. Regret itself is enough to annul the vow. There was a woman who basically made a vow against her daughter, also coming to Rabbi Yochanan. So she came to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said to her, Ilu Avi Adas, the Amrin, Migirtech, Allah debartech. They said, if you had known that your neighbors would say about your daughter, Ilu lo chamata ba ima milin da ziva b'chtilo adarta, that the neighbors are saying about your daughter, if her mother and not seen her doing bad things, that as a result of this, she had to basically annul her. She never would have made a vow against her. If you had known that your neighbors were going to say this, would you have ever made the vow? That's what Rabbi Yochanan said to her. And she said, I never would have made that vow. So Rabbi Yochanan annulled the vow. So we see from here, Rabbi Yochanan doesn't say just regret. Rabbi Yochanan requires Pesach, not Charata by itself, because this is a Pesach. This is the new circumstances. When you made that vow, you would have known that your neighbors would be saying gossip about your daughter, not just that she got you upset. She must have done something terrible. So that was the only way that Rabbi Yochanan annulled the vow. So we see Rabbi Yochanan requires a Pesach, and Charata is not sufficient. And we'll just finish today's daf with this final piece. Bar Barate de Rabbi Yanai Saba, the grandson, the son of the daughter of Rabbi Yanai Saba, also coming to Rabbi Yanai Saba, came in front of Rabbi Yanai Saba. Amarei, he said to him, Ilu avi adat, te patchim pinkasech umeshamshin b'uvdech minadart. If you had known that when you make a vow, every time you make a vow in heaven, they open up your pinkus, they open up your ledger, and they start looking at all your deeds, minadrat, where you have made the vow. If you had known this, he said, Amarei lo, I wouldn't have done it if I known that. V'sharye. So he annulled the vow. So we see from here also it requires a petach. Basically, you made the vow because you didn't know certain things about a vow. What's the reason why they open up your pinkus when you make a vow? Because the person who makes the vows shows, I'm so pious. Look, I'm making vows, and so he's sure that he's going to keep his vow. He thinks he's such a great person, and so there we start checking in Shemayim to see if he is really a great person or not. That's how the Ran explains it. So that's how the Ran explains it. So the Ran says. We don't have to read the Ran inside, but the Rosh says that there's an additional explanation that since he's doing something wicked, therefore they open up his ledger in heaven and they start looking at his actions. Some say that this is a proof for the idea that even if you're going to keep the vow, there's something wicked for having done the vow in the first place. So that's the proof of it, because they open up your ledger. All right, we'll stop here.